guys, welcome back to Grace Talks, where we get some community leaders and we talk about some things that are going on really in our lives. And today I'm really excited. We have Harry Lee, who is the lead pastor of Mosaic Church, one of the churches that really kind of birthed Grace United, gave us support, gave us wisdom, gave us some direction. And really today what we're going to be talking about with this man who has so much expertise is what it's like to be a member coming into a multi-ethnic church. How do you navigate it? What are some things you can expect? Because this is the guy who has all the answers, obviously. So, Harry, welcome to the podcast. Hey, tell us kind of here at the very beginning. You kind of have an interesting story about how you got into the pastorate, what you did before the pastorate. Like, how did you start at Mosaic?
Yeah, it was purely a God thing. And, I was a big geek for a lot of years. I was working as an electrical engineering professor at the University of Idaho for 10 years. And about halfway through that career, God just did this major work in my heart. I mean, it was where I would go into my office and have, 2 or 3 hour quiet times with God. And it's just completely transformed my life. And as a result of that, lots of ministry started happening, and it began to wonder, is there more to this life than me being a professor?
Okay.
And so from that moment, it took like 6 years for him to reveal the where, the when, and the how. Actually, he only revealed the where and the when. He didn't reveal the how until after we got here, because in the fall of 2000, or in the winter of 2002, is when I made my first trip here to actually do research with another professor from the U of A, and I very serendipitously met Mark DeMoss, who's the founding pastor. By the way, I'm not the lead pastor; I'm the senior pastor. Oh. And so I don't know what the differences are, but you
do you have a lead pastor?
Mark is our directional leader, so he's the one that founded the church.
Okay.
And so we've been working together for all these
Bishop
years.
and I. He's the visionary pastor, and I'm the directional pastor. I'm not really sure the difference in those two.
You know how
but
the titles are.
Yeah, whatever they are.
They're super important in the aren't they?
Super important. So let's start right here. Why is a multi-ethnic church important to you? Mm-hmm. Why is it important for you to be a part of a church that part of the definition, part of it's defined by its multi-ethnicity?
Yeah. For as long as I have been alive, all my friends have been just from every corner and walk. I mean, I didn't even realize it till I got here, in 2002, looking back on my life, just like even looking at the groomsmen in my wedding. Just one was a son of immigrants who spoke Spanish from Central America. One was African American. My brother was my best man, and nobody ever said, you got. And then I had a Caucasian guy that was also in my wedding groom. So nobody ever really said, you got Black, White, Asian, Hispanic in your wedding party. Nobody. I never even noticed that had happened, and it wasn't until when Mark laid out the vision of Mosaic Church, I didn't even realize a church like that could exist, or that you could plant a church based on just the fact that you're so different ethnically, socioeconomically. And the minute he laid out this vision for it, I just couldn't sleep. It kept me awake for days. I was here to do research. I did not sleep a wink when he told me about this church. And from that moment forward, all I wanted to do was find out more about this church. And then 9 months later, we ended up moving here.
So is this, I know that, so Mosaic is how old?
23.
23, okay. So, right at the beginning of these type of movements, I would imagine,
Mm-hmm.
You know the movements better than I do. But at least here in the Little Rock area, maybe the oldest multi-ethnic, like defined as like intentional
Yeah.
multi-ethnic, you're probably right around there. And I know, like I said, you've done a lot of help with other churches that are trying to replicate in some way what you guys are doing, which includes Grace United, right? We stand on your shoulders, which is awesome. What in our communities, at least in my view, each church we're all centered around the same gospel, the same Jesus. But at least in my view, we're not all supposed to be the same church. I kind of take the spiritual gifts, how we're all different, but we make one. I kind of personally extrapolate that to churches in my own mindset and say, even though we're all working for the same thing, some churches are supposed to do this, some churches are supposed to do this, some churches are supposed to do this. So what is unique for a multi-ethnic church like yours? What unique place does that hold in the community? What does the community of Little Rock, let's talk about Little Rock. What does the community of Little Rock see? How does the gospel go out in a way that it doesn't go out in a church that's not multi-ethnic? And again, just to be clear, like we're not at all downing not multi-ethnic churches. It's just each church has its own unique witness in the city.
Yeah. For me, so much of it was being fully convinced and proving it that Christ could overcome the greatest divides of our day. You just don't find that in other places where there's just segregated churches, segregated audiences, homogeneous kind of crowds where there's an obvious us and them. And I go around, I talk about this a lot when I do my workshops around the country, and I always ask the question, do you believe practically that Christ can overcome the greatest divides of our day? Why or why not? And every time I've ever asked that question, every single person always says, yes, ideally. But
there's
always,
the yes, but.
there's always a but.
Yep.
And so much of the but is tied to fear. It's just tied to tradition. It's tied to socioeconomics. It's just tied to culture. And I basically bang my head up against the wall because I've heard it so many times. And I just want to say, can you say this without the word but? Because come the end of the story, that's the way the church is going to be.
Right.
And so we've always chased that picture since the very beginning. Like that's been our pattern is let's just chase what Revelation 7 looks like.
Yep.
And we'll see what happens along the way.
Yes.
And it's so unorthodox related to formal, classical, seminary training, all of that stuff that people who are seminary trained and who are formally educated in this world look at us and go, you all still don't really even know who you are. I mean, how can you have staff on your church with all these different kind of educational backgrounds? That just seems like it's impossible, And
so have you experienced, my wife says this all the time, and I'm sure you have in your workshops. My wife says that most people want a multicolored church, not a multicultural church. She says those are two completely different things. Have you run into that mindset where like, hey, we'd love to have people that look different than us as long as they just buy in and do everything that we do in our own culture that we're comfortable with?
Yeah, we call that assimilation.
Okay.
And we try very hard not to assimilate people. Now, the way it looks, on the other hand, on the side where you're not assimilating, you're actually accommodating, you're celebrating, you're willing to change forms of ministry so that all people will walk in and go, wow, It's not just me having to pretend like I'm somebody else. It's not me having to code switch when I walk in this church. It's all these different things. It's where somebody goes, man, that just meant so much to me. That ministered to me deeply because of the representation, because of the format, because of the form, because of the style, whatever. And there's 1,001 things people have never even examined under the cultural lens, that they just assume, many churches are so stuck in it that they would just assume it's wrong if they messed or tweaked with that one little aspect of the form, when in reality it has very little to do with function or the why.
Yeah.
And it has everything to do with just, the way it is. But they are so hard to try to change that.
So I know that y'all have developed systems over the years at Mosaic, I'm assuming, and just because you would have to. If someone walks into Mosaic or a truly multi-ethnic church that has, and they want that, they desire to be there, they see the beauty of being there, but they are walking in, as most people do before you get into one, from a church that is homogeneous. It looks the same. You experience the same culture and the same worship. How do you help them in those initial moments, in those initial weeks and months, to not only move from being okay with it, but to celebrating with, and also being able to think part of it is the hard part is laying down the things that you really love that sometimes you don't see. How do y'all help people move through that?
Yeah, there's a couple of really important ways. Number one, we tell them up front, and in all the new members class, when I go in, it's the first thing that I say. Welcome here. You probably love it here. You think it's really cool, but you need to be aware of what's going to happen the longer you stay. And a dear friend, elder of the church, brilliant man, told me one time, he's the one that said it. He said, Pastor Harry, people think it's really cool to be here at Mosaic, to worship with all these different people, but they don't understand that the longer they stay, the more they have to be willing to give up. And the minute he said that, I just said, I'm going to name this after you. So I call it, his name is Corey Montgomery. He's probably the most brilliant doctor in all of Central Arkansas. But so I call it Corey's postulate. At every new members class, you guys need to understand this is really cool at first.
But explain that. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I want you to explain that a little more. Like, help me understand. The longer I stay, the more I'll have to give up.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the things you think are central to your core beliefs, that you're so tied into. You've never really thought about it deeply. It's just what's been taught to you, and you're so used to it. It becomes very uncomfortable when you have to start laying some of that aside for the sake of the unity of the believers and the gospel itself. And so, when that stuff happens, a lot of times there's conflict. And so we always tell, along with that, is like there's 100% chance you're going to be offended,
yes,
or you're going to offend somebody.
Yes.
Because of what you hold dear to and the way you've been raised and your own perspective and your understanding of culture. So
I want to come back to the offended, but can you give, and I'm going to give you full permission to give a white boy example, right? Because I'm a white guy. So white guys come, because you've had plenty of white guys come into your church, think it's super cool, want to stay for a while. What's something from my particular culture, generalizing me, that I would have to probably give up at your church, if you could generalize?
Yeah. One would probably be the integration of faith and politics.
Absolutely. Because we keep them very separate most of the time.
Yeah, or they're intertwined in a way you don't even realize.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just become part of the way you were raised, part of the way you were taught. And so for somebody to say, you really need to think about this issue, not just from the biblical issue, but from the perspective of some of your brothers and sisters who weren't raised like you. It leads you to different solutions and different ways to accomplish some of the same kind of issues both sides of those aisles are trying to solve. And it just helps them to be aware, oh, maybe I need to start thinking about that differently. Others think it's compromise, though.
Yes. Yes. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Having walked through it. So how do you, so they're going to run into, the longer they're there, the more they're going to have to give up. And they are, not might, they are going to be offended.
Mm-hmm. Or offend somebody.
Or offend. Well, both and. Yeah, they're going to do both repeatedly. At least I do. So how do you help them navigate that? What instructions do you give when they get offended or when they offend? And because it's going to happen, how do you help them navigate that?
Yeah. Number one is like coming out of new members class, we do a thing called Multiethnic Conversations. It's 8 weeks of how to have a conversation.
There's a book.
With somebody not like yourself. It's led by 2 amazing leaders. They've done it a lot of years, and they just have the demeanor and the technique of teaching others. When you're talking about volatile issues, these are some of the things you need to be keeping in your mind as you relate to the people around the table, especially if there are people around the table that are not like you, thinking about it from a completely different end of the spectrum. And so it's just 8 weeks of that kind of training.
Right.
And every new member has to go through it. So, we've implemented this probably pre-COVID. I'd say 7 or 8 years ago. I bet you they've graduated 200, 300, 400 people out of those classes, since then. And so just think about over time how that influences the church in general. To have everybody trained, okay, so I'm not going to make these assumptions. I'm going to try very hard to understand this other perspective that's different than mine.
Right.
I'm willing to learn more, those kinds of things. And so that's a big step. And then the rest of it, a lot of it is just caught rather than taught. I mean, a lot of it is just look at the examples, the testimonies, the stories, the people. When you love somebody, you have you're already, the good thing, one of the best things about our churches is we're in proximity to one another. They're not just some detached group of people I know nothing about. These are people sitting next to me, worshiping with me, tears streaming down their face as they pray and worship God, the same God I do. And then when we pray and we lay hands on, nobody cares about all of that stuff.
We just had staff meeting before we were doing this podcast, and I quoted a book that I had read 2 summers ago, and one of its points was proximity breeds empathy.
Yeah.
Just that basic idea of you're pretty free to judge people until you get to know them, and then just that sheer proximity breaks down so many barriers.
Oh, and a good example is there's a dear friend of mine who we pray together. We try to pray together every week before the service. And he was just crying out to God, just like, okay, I know what I believe politically about the immigration issue, but then I'm here on Tuesday nights teaching English as a second language to some of our brothers and sisters in this church. And there's so much tension in me as I see the beautiful, gentle, loving people that I'm teaching and what I see and hear on the news and what I believe politically. And so, I love the fact that there's that tension. That's really the point of all of this, is that every person should be walking in tension of a lot of these values that they hold, and just trying to understand how does this look from somebody not raised the way I was?
So for the people that have not been able to make it, They come to Mosaic. They come to Multiethnic Church. They like what they see, but it's costing them too much.
Mm-hmm.
They can't. On those exit interviews, what's the most common thing that you've heard of the people that just can't hold on?
Well, how honest do you want me to be?
I want you to be. Let's be honest. Yeah, let's be honest.
No, I would say,
We're talking about you, Gary.
I would say that, I always say this, the reason's really never the reason. I mean, they may tell you one thing.
Okay.
And I've heard them all, and you probably have too.
Okay.
Very rarely, based on what I see and know, is the reason, the real reason. Ultimately, it comes down to me and what I see. It just makes people highly uncomfortable to have to keep giving up parts of their life that they held true to for so many years. And many times it feels uncomfortable, and therefore they think it's wrong.
Yeah.
And there's this assigning of right and wrong to cultural values that just, they're not right or wrong. They're just different.
They're just different.
Yeah.
So one more question as we close. I'm going to assume that you are going to continue to be the senior, not lead pastor of a multi-ethnic church. Why is it still worth it? What keeps driving you after all these years?
For me, it's all about just fulfilling calling. The only thing I want to do is make sure that come the end of the day, I have fulfilled everything God has asked me to do. And in this case, the dream we're chasing, which is Revelation 7:9, there's still plenty of work to do in it, even at our church. I mean, we're probably, I don't know, we're probably further in the process than some, but that doesn't mean we're any better, any more mature. I think a lot of times it's just we have more experience now that we've been doing this for so long. But I know there's so much more to do. I mean, it feels like every week there's another step that we can do to make our churches more one.
But the simplistic answer which I give all the time is, my job is to get up, do what the Lord asked me to do that day, repeat that process till I die. I like that.
Now, I will say this in closing. I don't think you can understand the full beauty and pleasure vision of a multi-ethnic church without understanding the concept of corporate sanctification.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of Western thought, that's almost a foreign concept because we're so steeped in individualism.
Right.
But you look at the end of the story, this is the body of Christ fully sanctified, no barriers.
Yeah.
But then you roll downhill to today, there's still plenty of barriers in every way imaginable, from the color of our skin to the way we spend money to all these different aspects that divide us, our politics, social life, you just name it, education. And so how can we apply the power of Christ to help overcome all those barriers today? And I think as well as I do, Josh, that God, I just think he smiles on us just for trying.
Just for trying.
It's just like,
it's a good job.
Yeah,
we're
just
failing forward.
Yes, exactly. Even though you don't deserve it, but man, just because you're trying, I am going to pour my blessing out on you. That's the way it's felt for me for 23 years.
Well, and he has, and I feel this way now. Hey, everyone, Harry Lee. He's an amazing man who has changed Little Rock along with his people under the guidance of Jesus Christ, who has poured his grace and mercy out on you. But I'm thankful for you because you helped guide us to what we're doing. Hey, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.